Food prices are not coming down. In fact, the high prices and the increasing food prices are becoming increasingly a hot button political issue, not just in the United States, but in other countries as well. And both in the United States as well as to our north, countries are starting to say more and more that the answer to this is communism. Now they say the word socialism, but really they're the same thing. So let's just be frank about it. When you start talking about state-owned grocery stores, that is not socialism. That is called communism, okay? When the government owns the means of production, when the government owns the stores, and the government is dictating to food producers how much food they're supposed to be producing and at what price, friends, that is called communism. And our fellows up to the north are starting to talk about bringing a grocery tax to bear on Canadians. And also we have one of our, the Chicago mayor is out there talking about putting in place state-owned grocery stores in order to control prices, of course, because we can't trust the free market to do things. Now, in a lot of these state areas like in Chicago, thefts from stores, the criminal gangs that are just looting the stores at will, I'm sure that will all stop once it's a state-owned store. We're going to talk about this and a whole bunch more on this episode of the Poplar Report. Welcome, I'm Steve Poplar. I'm an accountant, and we talk about the things that are impacting you and me and our food prices and all the things that impact us that the media doesn't want to talk about or doesn't want to dive deeply into. We talk a lot about freedom of the market. If you're on board with communism, if you want the government to just write you checks and you think that's going to be a great idea, that they should just issue more debt and write checks to people and just inflate away the dollar and inflate away any currency of the country that you're in, I mean, it sounds like a great idea, but the problem is it doesn't work. The socialism has failed everywhere it has been legitimately tried. Cuba, North Korea, Soviet Union, Communist China. Now, some people are like, well, Communist China is working. If you look at the numbers, it really isn't. It is not. The parts of the Chinese economy that work are the ones where they let it go free market. And the free market has actually started to work in China in a lot of places, but there's a lot of bad shadiness happening in the background that they just keep messing things up. I mean, they've never had a famine in the world that has rivaled China's famine, right? Mao's Great Leap Forward estimated to have killed 30 million Chinese. Government-run food production is a really bad idea. And so if you go to China and you look at how food production happens, you'll see that it's more capitalistic than it is socialistic, which is why it has actually managed to feed a lot of people. People own their own fields. They pay for the seeds to stick in the ground. And they harvest it and they get to keep the bulk of what they harvest. Now, there are taxes, just like there are in the United States, but what we're talking about here is Justin Trudeau of Canada. If you don't know what I'm talking about there, you might want to just Google Justin Trudeau and look at some of the speculations of his origins of DNA, right? And so we see that Justin Trudeau is out there saying that food prices are too high, and the solution to this is to threaten the companies that are delivering groceries to people. It's the grocer's fault. It's the grocery store's fault. It's the companies that run the grocery store's fault. Clearly, if we just threaten them, they'll just lower the prices, because that's how that works. That's not how that works. Friends, we see that if the prices are too high at the grocery store, someone else will sell those groceries. Someone else will find a way to deliver them more efficiently. But the simple fact is, running a grocery store is actually a very expensive undertaking, and the profit margins on groceries is usually in the 2 to 4%. So if you spend $100 at your grocery store is making maybe $2 off of that, or maybe up to, for some of the items, up to $4 off that. If you're buying generics, it's on the lower end, right? Grocery stores do not make a ton of money off you. When prices go up dramatically, it's because the production costs have gone up significantly. I know everyone wants to be like, well, there's greedy people. I've said this before, and I'm going to keep saying this. The situation of food shortages works like this. You have issues that happen in the production chain. You have shortages. You have temporary bottlenecks. You have temporary fluctuations in supply. These shortages lead to higher prices. That's what happens. That's the market correcting itself. As the prices go higher, other people are like, hey, I can make that. I can make that for cheaper. So they start producing more. It's a signal to the market to produce more of whatever this shortage is. And the market will deliver that. Unless what happens oftentimes is the government will step in and start setting price caps. They will artificially come in and start doing exactly what Justin Trudeau is doing up in Canada. Like, let's artificially push the price down. When you put price caps in, then everyone's like, well, then I guess there isn't really a shortage. There's no real reason for me to bust my butt trying to produce those things because there's no profit in it. And so the factories that exist will be the only factories producing whatever is in shortage. And this leads to, inevitably, massive shortages. So we've been talking a lot on this channel about these fluctuations in supply, because those fluctuations in supply will quickly turn into price increases. And unfortunately, in the world we live in, the government can't help but step in and say, let's start putting price caps in. Let's start meddling in the market, because government meddling in the market always works, right? Yeah, let's go to the graveyard of empires and go find where the Soviet Union is and ask them if price caps work. If you had these price caps on the production of food, right? And you go to your state-owned grocery store and you go and look at empty shelves. You might be able to buy like a little bit of this or a little bit of that at the set price, but generally speaking, you just can't buy anything because they don't have anything. And then you walk out of the store, and the only way that you can actually get the food you need is you start talking to farmers, you start to talk to people who aren't growing on a state-controlled farm, but rather they are growing on their little plot of land, or they're in the black market, basically. And you'll find that the price in the black market is much higher for the food. Why? Because that's the fair market price. The government has tried forcing the price down, but all it does is just creates this massive shortage. And that's what we're seeing once again. Justin Trudeau doesn't get it. Just because his father was a communist doesn't mean that he needs to be a communist too. It didn't work in Cuba, and so his daddy's failed experiment should not become Canada's new failed experiment. And we go over to Mayor Johnson in Chicago, and he's coming out and they're saying they're going to create state-owned grocery stores. I mean, all these grocery stores are packing up and leaving Chicago. Why? Because they don't enforce the law. It is impossible for them to stay in business when their workers are being murdered inside the stores, when gangs are coming in and looting the whole store out and the police just don't do anything about it. How can you do business? Well, the mayor of Chicago has the answer. Chicago will open up stores in the inner city. And I bet you that they will offer fair prices, equitable prices. They'll probably charge you a different price depending on the color of your skin, because, you know, that's the thing to do nowadays, right? If you're a privileged class, then of course you got to pay more money than if you are a unprivileged class. Funny how racism is just alive and well, and they can't even see how racist they're being everywhere they go. Anyway, the people that they're supposedly helping, they seem to be trying to cut down at every turn. And they're trying to bring in this communism, this state-run stores. I mean, I live in Pennsylvania, and we have the state-run liquor stores here. And I don't drink alcohol, but I've heard enough from folks about how awful it is. It's just the prices there are just unreasonable. Supplies, there's always shortages. They can never keep the right alcohols in stock, because the government running a liquor store across an entire state as big as Pennsylvania is really a stupid idea. It's a terribly stupid idea. And that's exactly what they're doing. And Chicago's like, let's do that, but for food, because I'm sure that's going to end well. So another stupid idea in Chicago of them not understanding how the world works and deciding to just fight against gravity. Next, they're going to be jumping off buildings to see if they can fly, because, you know, the laws of physics and economics don't actually apply to Chicago, so they say. Well, if they can pull that off, more power to them. But here's the fact. The fact is that communism doesn't work. Government self-interest does not end up in the betterment of humanity. It ends up in the betterment of the bureaucrats, betterment of the select few. You don't get equality, you get equity. You get some more equitable than others. And that's what we're seeing across the country in small parts here now, and what we're going to be seeing in larger and larger parts going forward. Friends, if you're in Chicago, do what you can to get out. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy there, right? We all have to make decisions in life, and I'm still in the crazy state of Pennsylvania, and we're all kind of where we are for reasons. God has placed us on our earth for more reasons than to be safe and secure. And I understand that a lot of you guys are living in places that maybe are not the optimal places to be, but because of family or for work or for whatever reasons you haven't been able to get out of those places, and maybe you won't ever get out of those places. And you have to do as best you can where you are. And yeah, we got a bunch of people on YouTube who are in California. I don't get that. I mean, if there's any place to be getting out of right now, it's California. But that's do what you can out there. Be aware of what's happening, and be aware of how much they're going to make a boondoggle of all this stuff. As government steps in to bring price controls and meddling into the food market, I promise you, epic shortages are coming. I've been predicting it all along. You guys have been seeing it. You guys have been feeling it and knowing it. And here they come. All right, folks. If you want to check out another video from this channel, there's one right up here. Thanks so much for watching. Steve Poplar of the Poplar Report, out.